Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a non-spoiler book review for Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. Generally speaking, when I do book reviews, I'm not referencing other books by the same author, but so many people, I think, associate this book with Uprooted, and they are both fantasy standalones, they're both adult fantasy, they're both very folklore inspired, but I heard so many people say, even if you don't like Uprooted, still check out Spinning Silver. I personally agree with that 100% because I didn't personally care for Uprooted very much, and I loved this book. I loved it so much. Just absolutely, I was going to say absolutely delightful, but it's not exactly delightful. It is so dark and whimsical and rich, and it's the perfect book to read in the colder seasons. It's so atmospheric. The folklore elements truly are wonderful. It's a lot of things that are somewhat familiar to you, but also I think are very clever. So there are these beings in this book that are kind of how we think of fae. A lot of fae books have become very popular as of late. And so a lot of the trickery and the being sneaky side of the fae, where they can't really lie, their names are really significant. That's more of the vibe you're getting here. We're not getting super sexy fae. The story follows several different characters. There's a couple of main point of views, but there's actually a lot of different point of views throughout the story. The main ones are Miriam. She's, I would say, the most significant, or at least at the beginning of the book she is. She is a moneylender's daughter. This does take place and is inspired so much by our own world. So you do see that they are Jewish, and people do not necessarily treat them particularly well. And so her father is kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place because he's a moneylender, but he's a very sweet man by nature. And also, people tend to have some pretty negative assumptions about people who are Jewish. So despite the fact that it is his job to lend people money and then get that money back, and often with interest, he pretty much just lets things slide, which is resulting in poverty for Miriam and her family, and her mother is getting sick. So at the beginning of the story, you see this character decide, you know what, I've had enough. And so she starts demanding what they are owed. She doesn't really care what people think of them. And she actually starts to earn a lot of money. In doing this, she, in some interesting circumstances, kind of acquires a servant, a girl who comes to work for them. Her name is Wanda, and this particular character, their story is so sad. So they are the daughter of a farmer who owes Miriam's family money, and they can't afford to give them money back. Now, it sounds a little sad. The reason that Wanda is working for Miriam is because it's going to work toward her father's debt. And at first you're like, oh, that's kind of sad for her. Definitely not. The circumstances are very sad. This book does have quite difficult scenes involving abuse. So if that's something that's difficult for you to read, just know that is it's gonna pop up in this book. With these two women's plotlines intertwined, you have Miriam kind of boasting about her ability to make money back at one point, and this attracts some attention from some magical beings who decide they are going to task Miriam with turning silver into gold. Miriam has to figure out how she's going to do this, and this is going to tie them into another plotline, which is a political figure. And this is a woman who she has never really been seen as very valuable. Her value is based in how high she can marry. She's involved with politics, so you do get some scheming involved. She's very cold and witty and calculating, which is very different from our other two characters. All the characters have very vibrant personalities in that they are distinct. Not vibrant like they're all, oh yeah, guys, I love life. Not like that. I just mean they all feel like such real individuals. What helps with this is that the story, every point of view is in first person. That does involve a little bit of a critique I have, which is more so with, honestly, the way that the book is presented, because it would have been a very easy fix. It's really nothing to do with the story. But every time you switch point of view, it does not tell you whose point of view you've gone to. So every single time you have to use context to figure out, wait, who am I with right now? Oh, okay, I'm with them. Which is a little confusing initially because your first three main point of views are all women of roughly the same age. So that is a little difficult. A simple just writing their name, Irina, Miriam, Wanda, would have cleared that up. And then later you get more point of views. You get the political figure's servant, you get the other character's little brother, you get all sorts of different point of views throughout the story, and it would have made it more seamless. It would have prevented me from kind of being pulled out of the story when that happened. However, the way that Naomi Novik utilized the first person point of view, I thought was incredible. Even if I didn't love certain characters or didn't love being with certain characters, she made all of them feel very real. Even the little boy that gets a point of view at some point. I also feel like there was interesting decisions made as to who would get a certain point of view when. Sometimes there were some scenes that were really exciting. They were very climactic. I was captivated by the scene. I was so excited to be in that scene. And then I would get that scene through the point of view of the little boy. And I'm like, why am I getting this scene through through his eyes? That's just, I don't always love little kid characters in adult fantasy books. I do think that she wrote him very well. I think she wrote every single character very well. She also had one of the most amazing uses of, I guess you could say, morally gray. There were so many times when you get introduced to a character and you're like, well, this person sucks. I hate this person. And then you kind of get to know them a little more and you're like, dang it, now I feel kind of bad for you. And then there are other characters that our characters would meet and think, this person's rotten, they're terrible. And I'm like, I think there's more to the story with this person. And then you read on and there is indeed. And it was really exciting to get to know more of the characters, to get to know more of what was going on, especially with the magical elements. And on that note, for those of you who love to read fantasy for the magic, there's soft magic systems, hard magic systems. And then, of course, soft is more of a loose, just things can happen because magic. And I definitely think that we see so many people love hard magic systems. I kind of attribute that to Brandon Sanderson being so popular because he really, I think, has very strong hard magic systems. And we've lost a little bit of the love of soft magic systems, which is more, I would say, true of folklore-inspired stories. And that is true of this one. The magic, I personally feel like you just kind of have to go with it and be like, I guess that's what they can do now. And it never bothered me because it wasn't a huge plot convenience sort of thing where a character would be injured and they're about to die. And then even though you have an established magic system, suddenly there's some loophole that you've never been told before and then it fixes everything. That drives me crazy. That's not really what this is. It's just magic exists and the characters don't really know how it works. So it's more of them living their very bleak, cold lives, trying to eat food and work and survive and not get sick. They have that in their life, a very real, almost historical fiction type of setting, and then all of a sudden magical things will happen and they're trying to navigate that. So the magic is very mysterious. If you like that, you're going to probably really like the way that magic is used in this book. Something else I want to point out is this book, I would say overall, is not funny. I keep using the word bleak because I do think that it's very fitting of the story. The circumstances are really tragic for a lot of the characters, and so much of what I liked about this book was the quiet victories and the outsmarting, outwitting of other individuals, especially and just with the female characters. Honestly, the female characters, they do not have a lot of power, and so the ways in which they find to be powerful given their circumstances are tremendous, and I think it gets you kind of emotional reading about it. There's one scene where I don't want to give too many details because this is spoiler free. There's a scene though where a character's fate is being decided for them, and they have been so fearful of this moment. And when they tell them this is what's going to happen, and all they say, it shouldn't have been so emotional, but all they say is no. And I was like, yes, because it was so satisfying to have them say no. Really tragic stuff happened immediately after that part, though, because there are consequences to refusing. But just the way that these women aid one another, how much they're able to do within their circumstances is amazing to see. But what I'm getting at is despite all of these quiet victories and how difficult their circumstances are, the book can be pretty funny, and not traditional funny that's super, super on the nose. But there was a part where, because I've mentioned that there are these sort of fae-like people, and of course, with the way the fae talk, they're always saying things not particularly direct, and they're always sort of they're telling you the truth, but also it could be interpreted another way. And at one point, a character makes a deal where the fae being has to answer 3 of their questions every night. And they have to be really careful about how they ask the question, because the person can choose to answer them in a very snarky way, and it was super hilarious to me. I tabbed one of the examples. So a character has to fulfill a certain task they've been given, and this task is basically impossible. They're trying to work through it as quick as they can. And so they use one of their questions to ask the being, how can I make this go quicker if you know of any way? And the person says, you can only do it as quickly as you can. Why would I know if you do not? Which, of course, is super aggravating. And they say, what's past the edge of your kingdom where the light ends? And their answer is darkness. And I thought that was hilarious. And then, of course, the character's getting all upset and worked up. And they're like, I can see that. I can see that much for myself. And they're like, well, then you need to learn to ask better questions. I just loved that dynamic. I thought it was hilarious. I loved getting to see more of that side of the story, the more magical realm, because I found that the characters would seem so cold-hearted, no pun intended if you have read the book, but they seem so cold-hearted, but it's more of like their different culture and customs to a degree, and it's really interesting to see how one of our characters has to navigate that. In general, though, I always loved those interactions. I was always eager to find out more, and then by the end of the book, I loved the ending. The last line was strangely precious. The last chapter, the found family elements, how they are played out in the book, I absolutely loved. It's just, I was not expecting to like this book so much, because I do enjoy a good atmospheric read. They are rarely my favorites. I do like a good folklore-inspired story, but a lot of times that whimsical, dark fairy tale-esque feeling creates this sense of detachment from the characters often, because you feel like you're being told a story. I said recently that this one, instead of feeling like I'm being told a story, it feels like I'm experiencing the story. It was atmospheric. It was all those things I just described, but I'm a very character-driven reader, and this one, that's what I often miss out of the books that have those other elements. But this one, to me, had it. If you don't like the characters, you probably will get frustrated with the book. If the point of view changes are going to annoy you, they're going to annoy you. That's going to frustrate you probably about the book. So hopefully that doesn't bother you too much. And if you are somebody who wants a story that is less quiet in its victories, then I think that this is probably not going to be the book for you. If you're looking for something epic where they just take down the big bad and they're on this mission, that's not really what the story is. But I thought when it comes to fantasy standalones, this is a very well-contained story. There was so much to it. It was very rich. I loved it. If you've read this book, definitely let me know your thoughts on it. If you've read it and Uprooted, I would love to know your thoughts from one to the other. How do you compare this one to other winter reads? But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.